Welcome to episode 20 of the Wheelhouse. I am Andrew O. With me, like last week, is Jacob Estrada. How are you?
Hey, doing pretty good.
We are on the final stretch of our stint in Nacogdoches for the Elsewhere, Texas shoot. Right? Well, you're almost done.
Yeah, well, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah. Abandoning the team.
I know. Abandoning you.
Can't even stick it out all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I am going to the end.
Yeah, you're a stronger man than me.
Well, why exactly are you leaving early again?
Because I've got a job back home, and I've already missed a couple days because of the shoot, and I really can't miss any more. Because originally they said it was going to end tomorrow on the 14th. Mac and Trevor said that, and those were the days I gave them that I would be gone. And then they changed it, and it was too late for me to ask for more days, So it is. And this past week, since the last time we recorded, we've been switching the shooting up to day shoots now. Although we haven't been shooting a lot recently, which we'll get to. But day shoots. We all thought that'd be better than night shoots because it was like, man, for night shoots we have to stay up from like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and throwing our sleep schedules off. Day shoots would be great because, you work during the day, sleep at night, that's normal. But I think at this point a lot of people are regretting that they thought that because day shoots are their own bag of worms. Can of worms or bag of worms, whichever. It's hot as fuck.
It's super hot in Texas.
I am sunburnt.
I'm not.
And I'm not white. I'm Hispanic.
Did you use sunscreen?
Everywhere except my neck, which is where I got sunburned, So
you can't. That's your fault, man.
Yes, it is my fault.
A lot of people. I've heard a couple other people at the crew are like, "Oh, I don't need sunscreen. I don't get burnt." Next day, they're burnt. It's like I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're in the sun. Use sunscreen.
You're right. It's entirely my fault.
Yeah.
But also, I don't like the sun being so hot.
Well, that's something we got to deal with. And man, what are the general hours for day shoots? It's like around maybe 9 a.m. leave, and then we're back at like, I don't know, 9 p.m. It all depends. And
well, the other day, we had a day shoot followed by a night shoot or a partial night shoot, and we ended up getting back at like 1 a.m.
Yeah, and that was because we were delayed with the weather, which is a whole nother problem, because with rain, we can't shoot. Not only because, on a practical level, because it sucks to shoot in the rain and, have to protect equipment, but also continuity, because if one day it starts raining, it's going to mess up all the other scenes where it's not raining.
Yes, if you are planning production dates, make sure to check if it's going to rain that day.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hotness, you said that you felt hot, but you weren't in a truck like me, which is one thing I had to do as a production audio mixer, is that when they record dialogue, or when there's a scene inside a car, I have to be in the car also, because that's where all my microphones are, and that's how I record it. So there's a scene where this red truck was on a trailer, and then the two actors were in the front seat, and I had to like crouch down on the floor in the back seat with all my equipment and hide in there, and it was super hot and disgusting, and yeah, that was probably the worst part.
I'm very sorry. Yeah. That sounds awful.
And you didn't have to go through it, and you're leaving, so
yeah,
you can be quiet.
I'm sorry.
But anyway, what are your plans for the summer in general? Anything as noteworthy as a film shoot going on for you?
Not really. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna go back home and work. It's only a couple hours a day, but aside from that, during my free time, I want to try to learn as much post-production stuff as I can, because like I said, I've downloaded a bunch of editing and color correction and sound mixing software at home. And as you explained to me, there's lots of tutorial videos I can find through Linda and, other resources available to us as film students. So, I basically plan to spend a lot of time practicing that and try to get some writing done so I can have, some movies ready or projects ready to go when the next semester starts, and I have access to cameras and equipment and crew again.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to be doing is also learning and writing. And, of course, throwing in a healthy mix of media, which is what this show is about. If you don't know,
Actually, I don't know what your show's about.
Well, on the Wheelhouse, every week we recommend a piece of media. Usually I have two guys called Gus and Sterling, but they're dead.
Yeah, I know. They spoke to me last night. They came to me as these blue intangible ghosts, and they told me to tell you that they think you're doing the show all wrong.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they told you that I'm going to be visited by three ghosts tonight. They'll tell me all about the past, present, and future of the Wheelhouse. But that's probably not going to happen. What will happen?
Don't speak too soon.
What will happen is that we're going to review, or I'm going to review, a piece of media that was recommended last week, which is 1010! Exclamation point. And the way I said 1010, I felt like I didn't have that enthusiastic exclamation in there, so that's why I said exclamation point.
Please explain to me what 1010 is.
1010, this was recommended by one Alex Placente, whom you know, because
yes, I do.
She starred in your film as well as mine. It's an iOS puzzle game developed by Graham Games. I believe it was released...
Oh, wait, I think she told me about this.
Yeah, it's released September 25th in 2014. And basically in this puzzle game, you play on your iPhone, iPad, what have you. You place these different shaped blocks on this 10 by 10 grid and try to make these complete rows and columns, and then they get cleared, and then you have more space to put more blocks. And then you lose when you have blocks and you can't fit it on the grid anymore. Sounds familiar? Well, it's kind of like Tetris. But,
yeah, Alex, I'm sorry. I'm probably not going to be playing this game. I remember she told me about this before, and it sounds like one of those games that you just get annoyingly addicted to, and then you waste hours and hours playing.
Well, she did mention of its addictive properties, which I'll get to. But first, I'd like to talk about some of the good things that I really like about this game. The first and foremost is its minimalist design. If you take a look at the game, right when you start the game, the main menu, there's like no text on the buttons. It's just like buttons, the big buttons with like symbols. And they're pretty obvious what they are. Like there's a triangle, green triangle, the biggest button on the screen. I wonder what that means. He's probably going to play the game. Stuff like that. Reminding me of this other game called Elis Infinity that kind of had that also, which is buttons without any text. And I really dig that. There's a nice color palette. Very simple pastelish color scheme through the menus and through the game also. It's very just pleasant to look at. And no music, which if you want that, that's fine. If you want to play your own music, you can. The only really sounds there are the button presses and in the games when you manipulate the blocks. And yeah, when I first played it, I'm like, yeah, this is a lot like Tetris. But I realized it's not. It ain't like Tetris because if you try to play it like Tetris, you're going to be screwed, because the way you play Tetris is you try and get all the blocks to fit nice and neat into like larger quadrilaterals that will eventually fill out the rows and you get cleared. But really, that's sort of like a detrimental mindset to have in this game, because you're not trying to get all the pieces to fit into like perfect squares with each other. Really, the main goal is just to get it all the way to the sides so you could fill out a row or column. It doesn't need to look neat and have everything placed together. At least that's how I realized. For me, that's how I got more successful at the game, was to try and think it like that. And trying to getting over that mental hurdle, I thought was both fun and challenging, and trying to switch from going from what I really knew about, which was Tetris, to this new game.
Perhaps I shall play this game.
Sadly...
You have intrigued me.
Sadly, after that,
no.
There's not much more to it. I didn't get any more of those mental battles after that. It's a really easy game, which I think in the description of the app itself, it says how there's no color match. Like, you know, in other like match 3 games, you have to match things with similar objects or colors. Nothing like that. There's no timer. You just play at your own pace, which isn't inherently an issue. But the bigger problem is that it's so easy. There's no like strategy involved in the game. There's like nothing to learn after a point. It's like, okay, I know to put these blocks to get making rows and columns. That's it. Like 30 minutes into a game, you're still doing the exact same thing. There's really nothing new to it. The bigger problem out of that is that there's no skill involved. You're never really learning anything. So there comes a point where you go, or at least for me, I go, okay, I think I got what this game is about. Why should I keep on playing? But the hands down coup de grace is that a lot of this game is predicated on luck. This game can pretty much go on forever, like I said, because there's no real new elements added as you play. But sometimes you're just randomly given 3 blocks that are huge that just don't fit in the space you have. And it's just by random. Sometimes, because some of the blocks that they give you vary. Some of them are literally one, like, section of the grid. Whereas there's one piece that's like 3x3. That's 9 blocks. Sometimes you'll get like 2 3x3 blocks and then like a long piece. Just randomly. And just by chance, you get that you're screwed over and you lose. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a problem. There's another iOS game I absolutely love called Threes. It's another puzzle game where you slide
Alex,
stuff.
if you're listening, Andrew gave your game a bad review.
It's like, it's also sort of a puzzle game where you slide things around and manipulate them, but it's more like math-based. Well, it's not really math-based, but there's numbers involved. And what I love about that game is that it is predominantly based on skill, but there's like a 5% element of luck, where sometimes you're given advantageous pieces or detrimental pieces. And it's just enough for you to feel like you want to keep on playing because you feel like you're getting better, and in addition that you might get lucky this time. But when you lose, you feel like it's because you could have done better. It's not because the game screwed you over. Whereas in 10-10, when you lose, you feel like because you got dealt a bad hand, and it feels unfair. And then I mentioned earlier that it felt like going on forever. And it feels like it does at a certain point because, the only real measure of your progress is a high score. And that thing like crawls at like a turtle's pace. Like you play for an hour and you get like a score of 4,000. And I know that number is like arbitrary, but to get to that score again, it's a huge time investment. You got to play for like a good solid hour. And like I said, in that solid hour, you're doing the exact same thing. There's no change from what you're doing in the first minute to like the 60th minute. So when you lose, you go, okay, why would I want to go back and do that all over again just to get like an extra 10 points on my high score? So a lot of criticisms there, and this is only noteworthy because of how noteworthy it is, but there's also ads in the game, and how they're used is kind of funny because they're kind of scary sometimes. Right? Because when you get to the point where you can no longer place any blocks, the game automatically just says, okay, you're done, right? There's no like soft like blinking lights or you're about to lose. It's like, no, you're done. And it immediately just cuts to an ad that covers the whole screen. And the first couple ads that they showed were really scary because they were just really loud, and the imagery was creepy. The first one was like a makeup game for like applying different makeup
sounds hilarious
to different caricatures. But the first image you see is like this like woman's face with this like black mascara like dripping down and a loud sound that plays all of a sudden. And like I mentioned to you before, the sound design is very minimal, so the game's really quiet. And then all of a sudden it goes full blare ad, woman with mascara running down. I got freaked out. And then the next ad was like this murder mystery game where again, covers the whole screen, loud sound, and then you see like a dead body lying on the ground. It's just really jarring, and you could pay $1.99 to get rid of ads. But honestly, this game is already free. I would say download it, play it once, and then delete it. and definitely don't pay for that $2 removal of ads. And yeah, I was not addicted. I enjoyed the first couple games, but after that I'm like, okay, I'm done. There's nothing new for me here. But someone who did get addicted was my mother. She likes to play, like Bejeweled and Candy Crush and those sort of match 3 games. And I do, there is some appeal there, to me, but I don't, not enough for me to, consistently play it. But she plays it regularly, and I said, okay, this sort of game might be down her alley, and she ended up loving it, and she downloaded it on her phone, she had it on her iPad, and she played it constantly, and she just told me recently she had to delete it because she was so addicted. So, Alex, you are not alone. I'm just not with you.
And I'm sorry, Alex, but I will probably not be playing the game you've recommended.
So, wow, I felt like that was a good review for
I wonder if Alex is actually going to listen to this.
Probably not, but, not many people are, but...
That's what I assume.
C'est la vie. Anyway, that is my review for our main topic today on the Wheelhouse. Next, we're going on to our next segment, the summer segment,
called Who is Bruce Springsteen, where each week Jacob and I talk about an album to cure him of his musical ignorance. And today, what are we talking about?
We are talking about the Marvin Gaye album, What's Going On.
And you mentioned before that you like Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
What sort of exposure do you have to his music?
So here's the thing. In preparation for this episode of the Wheelhouse and in listening to these songs and doing some more research, I've said that I do like Marvin Gaye and I've listened to some of his songs before, but I've realized as upon doing research for this album, a lot of the songs that were Marvin Gaye songs that I liked were not actually Marvin Gaye songs. They were just songs sung by Marvin Gaye, but not actually written by him. So I think with this album, this is actually, I think, my first exposure to songs actually written by Marvin Gaye.
Well, a lot of times a lot of musicians don't write their own music, so there's no problem with that. I probably I don't want to say something wrong, but like a lot of like the old Motown musicians, like they don't write their songs. You have songwriters and they perform it. So it's still, if it's still like most known for Marvin Gaye performing it, then I would still call it a Marvin Gaye song. And especially if it was written specifically for him.
Sure, but there is definitely a difference in listening to this song where, you know, he had a hand in its conception, and even if he didn't write all the songs by himself, he was clearly had a vision or an idea for where he wanted these songs to go. And so listening to these songs, I do think there is a big difference between the impression that these songs leave and a song like Ain't No Mountain High.
Yeah.
Which is a song I like a lot. I've listened to several times, but it's definitely in a different category than these songs.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
For my first time listening to songs that were actually written by Marvin Gaye,
Yeah.
I gotta say, I really love them. Honestly, I think this might be my favorite album so far on the Wheelhouse.
Nice.
And I regret that, again, because we've been working on elsewhere lately we've been working on film production for the past couple weeks. Again, I've had to rush through an album. And this is one, probably more so than the others, that I really do want to keep going back and listening to.
Yeah.
I really like how powerful it is, how there's that recurring story and theme between the songs of Vietnam War veteran who's, come back and, sees the country that he was fighting for and, sees drugs and sees police brutality and racism and, hatred and all this horrible shit, and is just at a crisis, like, what the hell was I risking my life for? Mm-hmm. And, as the song is, as the name of the first song, the album, and the album itself is called, what the hell's going on? What's going on?
That's not the name of it.
No, I know, it's what's going on. Sorry. What's going on, but, why the hell was he risking his life? And so, I just right off the bat, with how powerful the theme is, it leaves a bigger impression on me than most of the songs of the previous albums. Mm-hmm. And I also want to say, going off on a slight tangent here, listening to this album and just trying to absorb it, I can't help but wonder, what the hell were Charlie Puth and Meghan Trainor thinking when they named that tribute song Marvin Gaye? It in no way reminds me of a Marvin Gaye song.
I don't know what you're referring to. I guess I'm not hip to the music these days.
Oh, well, Meghan Trainor and Charlie Puth have a song called Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. That's
supposed to be a tribute to Marvin Gaye. But listening to it, it doesn't in any way make you think of any of these songs.
Oh. Well,
it's not even the same genre.
It doesn't need to be the same genre.
It's just, I don't know.
Are the lyrics tribute?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, I'll take a look at that afterwards. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just... Sorry, I just find it hilarious to listen to this and think of that song that is supposed to be a tribute to him, but in no way reminds you of him, other than that they say his name a bunch of times. But anyway, back on topic. I really liked how... I don't want to say simple, but how straightforward and, I guess I will say simple, how straightforward and simple the lyrics were. What's going on,
or save the children.
Yeah, or save the children. they're pretty straightforward in their messages. There's no crypticness. There's no subtle meaning, or at least none that I've caught on my first or second listening of these songs. But there's such a passion to Marvin Gaye's voice in these songs. Like this is like, listening to the song, this is all really heartfelt.
Yeah, well, the genre is soul, and it's like coming from his soul. Like,
yeah, so I guess
it's like
as the genre would imply, you can tell there's so much of his, and there is so much of his heart in these songs. Like, this is something he really cares about. These aren't just like, because I know all good artists are generally passionate about their work. But, like, you compare this album to, like, some of the Beatles songs I had to listen to, and while, they're all brilliant in their own right, a lot of the songs in that Beatles album I listened to, even though a lot of them were very creative and inventive, they came off as, like, a lot of them came off as kind of, like, very floaty, or, like, very fun, or just, like, hey, we did some drugs, and this is what we came up with. As brilliant as they are, but this one is just like, hey, these are serious issues I want to bring to light, and this causes me a lot of pain. This causes a lot of people a lot of pain, and this is me needing to express it in the best way that I can, and trying to just really trying to get people to understand and feel for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a definitive place where Marvin Gaye got that from, which I'll talk about right now. So What's Going On is Marvin Gaye's 11th album, released May 21st, 1971, which I mentioned last week. 1971, I think, is the best year in music.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. Marvin Gaye was, at the time, or before the release of this album, was established as just like a classic Motown musician. With, a lot of the songs, like we mentioned before, a lot of songs, were already pre-written, and also, like, topically are generally about, like, love and romance and all that stuff. He had a very, like, clean-cut look, and very soulful vocals, and all those particularly appealed to a female audience, who elevated him to sex symbol status. So that was just kind of his, like, position, his cultural position before the album was released. The late 1960s, Marvin Gaye got super depressed because a lot of terrible things happened. He had a singing partner, Tammy Terrell, and I believe she collapsed on stage during a performance, and it was found later she had a brain tumor, and then she died later, so that was very devastating. He had a failed marriage, he was struggling with cocaine, and also just in general, he felt like a fraud, that all the success that he had gotten was undeserved. And so this culminated in a suicide attempt. And just in general, after that, all this stuff happened, he sort of, tore himself away from the public light and became something of a recluse.
Holy shit.
And he did a lot of soul searching on many different levels. And then two things that sort of propelled the formation of What's Going On. Ronaldo Obi Benson? Yeah, Benson. He's a musician of the group Four Tops, and he, on one occasion, witnessed an instance of police brutality, and it was police brutality against anti-war protesters, and he writes a song about it. And his other band members didn't want to do it because it was like a protest song, and those can be very controversial. But Marvin Gaye took a liking to it and sort of adapts it and alters it to what we now know as What's Going On. In addition, he had a brother, Frankie, who fought in Vietnam and came back and sort of detailed his experience at the war. And all these things really transformed Marvin to decide to, okay, I want to, sort of set myself apart from, what my identity has been, and start fresh with all this new social commentary. And yeah, he decides to create a What's Going On, a very self-conscious and very soulful album with that social commentary imbued. And it wasn't like a completely smooth ride in its production. Barry Gordy, who was the head of Motown, disliked the song What's Going On,
because of how different it was, not only in popular music sentiment, but also of what Marvin Gaye was known for at the time. But it sold really well as a single, and eventually Marvin created the full album, and it was, upon its release, a critical and commercial success. And now it's considered one of the greatest albums of all time. And yeah, you mentioned before what's some things that are so great about it is that, you know, how thematic it is, that story. There's a through line through the whole thing, and that's paralleled in sort of how a lot of the songs, they blend into each other. There's no like fade out and silence. It's like one long continuous stretch of music, and it's incredibly impressive. Also, the sense of world building, especially in the first song, What's Going On, the last song, Inner City Blues, you definitely feel like this is taking place in a definitive world. Yeah. Especially in What's Going On with all the different like people hollering in the background and stuff like that. You definitely get that sense of an urban landscape. And just sort of the pacing through the whole thing, how it starts off with a very upbeat, more poppy, powerful song with What's Going On. And then it kind of really slows down, you know, What's Happening, Brother, Flying High. And then it really showcases his vocals and the more slow, contemplative parts. And I think that is the most impressive part of this album, are his vocals. And not only just the character of them itself, but just how they're like produced and mixed.
No, I mean, a lot of really love his voice. Yeah, his voice is just like insane.
But then how it's presented, how you have a lot of parts where you have multiple, you know, lead vocals and harmonies just like overlapping each other and just so intricately placed. It's just really, really amazing. So, any final words or favorite songs? What's going on?
I don't know about favorite songs, but I will say, yeah, it's just overall, it's just really powerful. It's the most powerful of overall of the albums that I've listened to so far for this show, and for that reason, among just the fact that I really love his voice, I'm gonna say it's my favorite album out of all of them.
Cool. But maybe with this next album, it will supplant What's Going On.
Yes.
Do you know what's up next?
It's a Led Zeppelin album, right?
Yes. Next week we will be reviewing Led Zeppelin IV, the fourth album released by Led Zeppelin. If you were confused by the title of the album, it was released November 8th, 1971. Look at that, another 1971 album.
Ooh.
It was sort of you could call it a rebound from their previous album, Led Zeppelin III, which was sort of a step down in some ways. I still think it's good, but yeah, generally, especially when it was released, people were confused, like, what the heck is this? It was definitely nowhere near as good as their first two albums. But Led Zeppelin IV is the definitive Led Zeppelin album. I mean, it has their signature song, Stairway to Heaven. So, bam. That also, in general...
That's also the only Led Zeppelin song I can name.
Nice. Well, you will be able to name more soon. And also, just in a larger sense, it is sort of the seminal hard rock sound.
That's fun.
In addition, just Robert Plant's powerhouse vocals, Jimmy Page's legendary guitar work, John Paul Jones' excellent bass playing, and John Bonham's dynamite drumming all make this an essential album. So, that's Led Zeppelin 4 to look forward to.
And I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I'm excited. I think I'm going to go back and listen to their previous albums leading up to Led Zeppelin 4 because I want to go revisit them. Because I've listened to them, but I think I could listen to them a bit more. So, yeah, that's... Oh, wait, last thing I have to do, which I forgot to do during our recording last week, is to talk about what's going to be recommended for the main topic next week. I just went on through to the ending, and afterwards I had to attach it on the end. It was really awkward. So now I'm going to talk about the recommendation, which is recommended by one Nathan Childress, who, speaking of people who worked on my film, he composed the music for. And so appropriately, he is recommending an album, which he will be talking about in this recording right now. All right, I'm here with Nathan. How are you?
I'm great.
If you hear this background noise, it's because we just finished watching some films that we made. We made one.
Well, I did music. I didn't make the film.
Well, it did a lot. I mean, it wouldn't be the same film without it. And you're here. While you're here, I have you recommending something for the podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna recommend an album by Sola-Mi, which is, I think it's a collaboration of different artists, and they make an electronic album. Mm-hmm. The name of the album, I believe, is Nexus.
Nexus.
Motion City Soundtrack. I may be
Motion City Soundtrack?
I may be wrong about the last part, but it is Nexus. I know that.
Okay.
And I was actually looking at my iTunes library today and realized that out of everything on it, that's the thing I've listened to most.
Most? Like, period?
Most. Yeah, it's
or
like...
recently?
Period. Like, total
goodness.
number of views. It's like 30 or something.
When did this come out? Is it recent? Or...
It's not super recent. It's a few years old. It's not...
Okay.
It's not super old.
It's post-2000. It's in the 2000s?
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's in the 2010s even.
Okay. I'll call that recent
but
overall.
It was out before I came to college.
Okay.
So
what is so great about this album that you would want me to listen to it?
Well, for one, it's just really good.
Okay.
And really interesting. But at the same time, it's more accessible than most electronic music, I feel like.
Yeah.
It actually has songs, but it's still hourly more interesting than most things I've heard.
Yeah.
It sounds like it does at some points things similar to dubstep, but to a completely different effect.
Yeah.
Like that's not this style at all. The album is also sort of narrative, and sort of about machine intelligence and the singularity, but you don't really need to know that or care about that to appreciate it.
Are there vocals?
Yes, there are vocals. I think it's only female vocals, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm not like a huge listener of electronic music, so
yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
In general, I'm not either. There are just specific artists that I appreciate.
Sure.
So.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.
And that was it. It's well, Jacob, you don't know what it is because of the power of editing.
Yes.
But if you go back,
very true.
If you go back and listen to the this very episode, you will be able to find out. So. That is the end of another episode of the Wheelhouse. If you can't tell from my voice, I'm very tired. I want to go back home, and I will be able to in a few days. Whereas you will be able to go home tomorrow. Oh yeah, you're going back home tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
You suck. Anyway,
I hate you too.
Thank you for listening. What you can do now is like our Facebook page at facebook.com/wheelhousecast. Follow us on Twitter at wheelhousecast. Subscribe to our feed on iTunes where you can also rate and review us. I actually might check after this recording, see if there are any new reviews. Probably not. I like to be pleasantly surprised. And email us at cast@gmail.com with all your recommendations and reviews and hate mail and all that good stuff. Yeah, I think that is it. Jacob, final word or final pun. Go. Okay, that's good.